Hugh, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. First off, you are famously known for your vocals and lead guitarist skills in the Stranglers, but your skills go far beyond that. You've gone solo since you were in your 30s. What made you make that choice?
Well, sometimes when you're working in a strict format with the same people, you need to spread your wings sometimes and just try other things. So I've made a couple of records when I was still in the Stranglers, just as a matter of doing something to do something different, really.
And you've since put out over 10 solo albums. What's it like having the completion of a solo album as opposed to one with your band?
Well, it's probably more satisfying because it's mainly a product of your own efforts and your own songwriting. Because when I was in the Stranglers, I used to write a lot of songs with the bass player, and of course Golden Brown was a co-write between me and the keyboard player. But although you do contribute your own songs to the band, the product is really something, is a joint effort. And I think when you're making a solo record, you treat it more as your own personal thing, and then your players play on it.
Now I'm going to go back to your album Hoover Dam. You did that one, but you released it as a free download. What does that do for you? How does that help you out if it's free?
Well, it was first suggested to be a free download by the record company who funded it, and they took me out to dinner and got me a few drinks, and then said that they wanted to have it as a free download, and their reasoning was quite convincing actually, because they said they thought that if they released it in the normal fashion, it would just attract the same audience as I had before, which was a very stable number size, and they wanted to expand it. So they thought that by making it free, a lot of people would take the chance to listen to it who wouldn't normally bother to listen to what I did. And it served as a shop window as well. It's like a shop puts something for free in the window and people go in the shop, and then when they're in the shop, maybe people see something else that they like. So it's a pure marketing gimmick. Well, tool rather than gimmick. And it's worked because I think the downloads are in the region of 100,000. And then if people like it, they pass it on to their friends, because you can just download it and file share. And it's also given me the chance to get into some territories that I've never been to. I haven't been to, like Australia, Germany. I've been going back to Germany a lot, Italy, Croatia, places that I didn't have the chance to get into before, and the audiences are growing there because in these sort of places, because and Brazil as well, because of this free download, and that's why we're keeping it as a free download even to this day.
So it's really opened a lot of doors for you. And with the internet being so huge in today's day and age, your newest album, Totem and Taboo, you've done a whole thing with a pledge page. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm very pleased with that. It was an experiment to see if we could get the record made with the help of funding from people who were into what I did, rather than a record label, to maintain independence. And we've managed to do it. People can go online and they join a group of people called pledgers. They pledge towards the album. They pay in advance for a copy of the album, or a copy of a T-shirt, or a copy of a vinyl edition of the album, a limited vinyl edition of the album, which they'll get later on when it's finished. And or also they could pledge for a live show, me coming to play it in their house if they wanted, if they can afford it. Pledge for manuscripts of books that I've written, things like this, and they get access to other special treats. Like when we made the album, I took a video camera in, a film camera, and I was posting a video blog every day from the studio, and only the pledges could see those. So yeah, it's a great idea.
And you've actually exceeded your limit, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you can't, the money isn't taken, the beauty of it is with these pledge campaigns is that the money isn't taken from the pledger until the target is reached. So it's a pledge, and it doesn't mean anything until the target is reached. But if you set your target too high, you might never get there. So in fact, we set the target, everyone sets their target lower than what they need, so that when the target is reached, then the money is collected. So although we've exceeded the target, we're still paying for the cost, basically.
Okay, and you're also doing work with a charity. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's also a great opportunity to try to raise money for a good cause and make people feel better about giving their money to something. And the charity Missing People has been a great of interest to me. For many years, I used to know someone who worked there many years ago, about 10 years ago, and I always knew that there were funding issues. And it's one of those charities that always gets overlooked. There's great charities in place for missing children and cruelty to animals, but there's very little funding in place for actually missing people. And the reason why I think it's very important and it's underfunded is because there's awful lot of people who've got people missing in their families, and they never get completion because they don't know if they're alive or dead. And there's nothing worse than being caught in the middle and being uncertain. And so I thought it was a good opportunity to try and give them a bit of a profile, a bit more profile, and maybe some of the funds as well.
It's a great idea. Now, this album you produced with Steve Albany, who has worked with bands like Cheap Trick and Pixies. And Nirvana.
And PJ Harvey.
Okay, yeah. And why did you choose to go with Steve?
Well, I have to correct you there quickly because he hates to be called a producer. Okay. He regards himself as an engineer and a mixing engineer. Well, he's always had a great skill and a reputation for recording things very, very well, and most of the new material was material that could really be played live. I wrote it as if it was a live record. There are very few overdubs on it. It's all minimalist playing. And he seemed to be the ideal person to try and capture that and put it on record. And we did it in 10 days, and he mixed it in 4 days. So it was a very, very fast process.
So for people that aren't pledgers, is there still a way of getting a hold of this album?
Sure. I mean, it's not just going to be available to the pledgers, but they will be the first people to get it. And they'll be able to get these limited editions of it. If people go online, they can pledge now until the end of April, I think, and after that, hopefully by then we'll have some means of distribution, probably electronic through the web, and people will be able to order it online. Unfortunately, I won't be able to give this one away. I have to. It's a bit of. I mean, I'm not funded by any organisation, so. Sorry.
It's your career, right?
Yeah, I have to pay the rent, so you can only give away albums once in a while.
True enough. Now, you have a ton of talent, as we spoke about, within the music industry, but you're also an author. Can you tell us a little bit about your newest book?
Yeah, Window on the World. Well, it's I had an idea for a short story a few years ago, and I didn't have any idea what I was going to do with it, and then I went on holiday alone, which I hadn't done for a few years, and took my computer with me, my laptop, and just started working on this idea I had. And surprisingly, it sort of took on its own life and turned into something else.
Now, why would you choose to write a book rather than to put that into another album?
Rather than
putting it into another album, putting those into songs.
Well, I'm see, I'm a huge a film fan. I'm a huge cinema fanatic, and I mean, I wrote a couple of screenplays about 15, 20 years ago because I'm a fanatical about films. And then I met an author who told me the best thing you can do if you want to write screenplays is to write a novel, write it as a novel first, and then change it into a screenplay later. So following those words, I've always been attracted to this thing about writing something a bit longer than a song, and it's quite a lot of work to write something that's 250 pages long. And something you don't have to do in songs. In songs, you don't have any problem with continuity, because there's very little continuity problems in songs between verse 1, verse 2, and verse 3, except unless you're in a Dylan song, then you might be. But then he can defy that, because he defies the continuity. You don't need continuity there. So with a big story, you have to remember what happened on page 43, and when you're on page 78, you have to remember that character B lives on the ground floor, not on the third floor. And that was one thing that I discovered when I was doing a rewrite. I suddenly realized that I'd put someone on the ground floor in page 43, and suddenly they were on the third floor on page 78. So you have to be constantly aware of what's happened beforehand. So it's a very interesting experience, and I loved it, and it's very different from writing songs. Yeah.
So when you say you're a huge cinematic fan, what would you say in your mind is the best written movie ever?
Oh, best written movie. Well, I'm very interested in adaptations, and I remember when Planet of the Apes came out, the original Planet of the Apes with Charlton Heston. Pierre Boulle, it was based on a short story by Pierre Boulle, a French author. A story which was 10 pages long, and he was at the film premiere, and he came out, and I remember distinctly seeing him being interviewed as he came out by someone like yourself, saying, "What did you think of the adaptation of your story?" And he said, and the original story was called Monkey Planet, and he said, "I am so pleased with what they've done. I think they've done a wonderful job," and that's quite surprising to hear that being said by an author. So I mean, I like good adaptations, and I think that Planet of the Apes was a sensational adaptation from a short story of 10 pages long. It's a remarkable job, and they got the original author's blessing. So can't do much better than that.
Good choice. Now I have one more question for you. I ask most of my guests. It's actually about your socks. Yes, I think you can tell a lot about a person's socks. And I'd like to know what Hugh wears to go on stage.
Well, very boring are black socks. Black socks, they can be any thickness. They have to be quite long, so they go over the ankle, because you can't. Cause if they're only those, there are these fashion for these short socks that only just go over the ankle. Well, if you wear those, they slowly slip off, which is no good at all. So they have to stay up. Very boring, actually, but just black socks.
Do you make sure they match?
Well, no, funnily enough, whenever you I do socks separately when I wash socks, and whenever you put 20 pairs of socks in the washing machine, you always end up with 2 or 3 that you can't find the other one for, and I don't know how it happens, but it always does. And I think it's they disappear somewhere. They get away somewhere.
I've heard sock trolls or gnomes. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I just wanted to add, I'm actually hoping to get off the ground an adaptation of Window of the World and as a film. And if Harvey Keitel's watching, there's a great part for him in it. It was written with him in mind in the book. A Korean War veteran who wins $90 million on the lottery and becomes a reclusive art collector, and he's instrumental in the middle part of my novel. So if you're watching, Harvey, read my book.